Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and a huge event called a Turbo Boost event is coming out rather soon on May 13th, which is going to be dropping a massive boost to how we get to gear our characters with uncapped crests, warbound valor stones, and even a massive upgrade to all of the different upgrade ranks for hero track and mythic track items for additional power gains for the rest of the season. We're also will be getting a currency that was initially going to be a bad luck protection for raiders. However, the community prevailed with this week's update, revealing that they'll actually give some drops for Mythic Plus players as well, allowing them to also take advantage of the bad luck protection to get some of the most competitive items available, which is massive. Plus, we also got even more updates regarding how gear is going to be functional in this Turbo Boost, but also additional gains that we'll be getting over the next few weeks as corruptions actually have gotten bolstered, which will offer even more gains for all of our characters for the rest of the season, which means easier time progressing through heroic or mythic raids, easier time pushing Mythic Plus dungeons for some of those coveted achievements, and being able to finalize your character with some guaranteed bad luck protection items in order to make your character the strongest it can be for the rest of season 2. And I want to cover all of those updates in today's video. As always, if you guys want to keep up with the regular patch notes for 11.15 or future updates like 11.17, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. Well, it looks like the community has claimed yet another one, boys. They actually listened, which is so good to see. So starting with the big Turbo Boost event, one of the things they're going to be introducing is a puzzling cartel chip, a currency that we've heard so much about. Some Windows players have been anticipating since the launch of 11.1 Season 2 content, but it looks like they're actually doing it a little bit differently compared to how the coin, or similar currency called dinar or bronze bullions, what they played in Shadowlands or Dragonflight, is going to function. We find out it's not actually currency to buy gear directly, but rather it'll be a component of bad luck protection for anybody that's been raiding throughout Liberation of Undermine, where you essentially have to defeat the bosses on a set difficulty before you can claim some of their coveted rewards. So if you want to get, let's say, a one-armed bandit and you defeat them on Mythic, then you'll have access to the Mythic loot of that boss, things like a House of Cards, or definitely not Galaxia bottle servers, but also like best slots potentially. Or if, let's say, you defeat Mythic Muggsy, then you could purchase his coveted fist weapon, or any of the other actually kind of solid trinkets, or Chrome King Galwix if you're looking to get Ayakazan or Jaster's Diamond. Yeah, you're gonna have to defeat the boss if you want those on Mythic version. You have to defeat the bosses on Mythic first to begin with, so it's a way for you to be able to get bad luck protection if you've been raiding. However, it does lock out a good portion of the community that hasn't been doing Mythic raids, maybe they do Mythic Plus or some other type of content, that'll feel like the currency dinar is kind of useless. I mean, you can purchase these items on hero track, but anybody that ends up spending the dinars on hero track items, it's going to feel like they wasted them when they can't buy them on Mythic instead, which is honestly a shame because this actually had been one of the more popular seasons of Mythic Plus in ever. I think season 3 of Dragonflight was the most popular one by far, but this one is like very even out because there's so many players not only diving into dungeons, not only pushing high-end dungeons, but also really getting into some of those really high-end keys. There's so many more players interacting and engaging with the system and some of the high ends out there, and it's really good to see. The changes they've done, the additions to Resilient Keystone, and the adjustments to dungeons, to the rewards of dungeons, everything has been so good, as well as some of the rewards, like players pushing for 3k can get a new variation of the Keystone Master mount from the Keystone Legend achievement. And that alone has gotten so many more players diving into really high-end keys just for that achievement. So there's a lot of players playing in Mythic Plus. It's a very popular this season, so it just sucked when they didn't have any opportunity for those players to be able to get their items to spend on with dinars. However, to make sure the Mythic Plus players are included, they actually are adding some Mythic Plus exclusive items on that new vendor, and the massive announcement, which means a huge win for the overall community. And now they'll actually add an extra vendor, or maybe the same vendor. I don't really know where the vendor is going to be in Dornegal. We'll definitely post a pin in our community Discord. Definitely be sure to join it if you want to know where the vendor is. As soon as we find out, I'll definitely make a pin somewhere in like the general section as soon as I can, but they're going to be adding a specific vendor or items on the same vendor from the dungeon pool as well. So if you are someone who's been pushing Mythic Plus dungeons or been getting engaged in Mythic Plus dungeons, you'll be able to get an assortment of trinkets from these dungeons, which are some of the most competitive trinkets we've seen in any season of Mythic Plus content. Some of the best items out there that even players that are currently raiding would love to have a Mythic quality. Now, the base hero version of these trinkets you can purchase without any requirements, but if you want the base slot Mythic track version, you will need to at least obtain all of your Mythic Plus keystones at a plus 12 bare minimum. But it will require for you to get the keystone resilient mechanic unlocked, and that will take for you to complete in time all keys at a plus 12 difficulty, which is pretty close to getting that keystone legend mount anyway, and more players are going after that one, so you'll be able to obtain this achievement while you're making your way and working on the keystone legend either way for the season. I mean, once a player has cleared every dungeon at a plus 12 difficulty, now it's like, you know, you've done every dungeon at a very, very high end difficulty, and this sets you up for a push potential. So being able to buy some guaranteed trinkets from some of these dungeons will be massive. Mythic Plus players will have access to every trinket in priority, which is amazing for healers, DPS, and even tanks. Literally some of the best trinkets out there. Dark From Theft also has a really good one. Not so much as like Terminal of Darkness, although I have some people running it. Carved Blazigon Wax, however, is a solid one for many casters. Even the Dungeon of Floodgate has the improvised C-Forum Pacemaker, which is one of the better trinkets for a good portion of strength and agility classes. A very consistent option with a solid bit of stats. I would, however, like to see them expand on this item collection to not just trinkets. As an Operation Mechagon, there is a weapon of Neural Synapse Enhancer, which is a good stab that offers you quite a decent bit of a stat gain. So I would like to see some kind of an item like this added as well to that list, as well as for any mages out there, imagine being able to get a mythic variation of the Hyper Thread wrist straps to finalize your character. I really think they need to add some of those unique items on there as well. And there's not like there's too many of them, but like Voltaic Stormcaller could potentially be one of those unique items because it does have an additional cantrip effect to it. Which will only be a couple of items because there's not too many unique items in the dungeons outside of the trinkets, and I really do think they should definitely be on the vendors in my opinion. But at the very least, this is a massive improvement for players that really highly engage with M+, which is a good portion of the player base. However, I think they definitely could do maybe even more improvements. I would have loved to see a separate vendor with delve items as well. So being able to get some of those on Mythic would have been awesome. Maybe that's something they'll do later down the line. I think it would have been great just to make delves feel like a proper form of endgame progression to be parallel with Raid's Dungeon and delves. But at the very least, this is a huge improvement for so many players that do engage with Mythic Plus that may not engage with Mythic raiding. Now, a massive event is going to be arriving very, very soon called a Turbo Boost event, which is going to be, I don't even know for how long, I think the rest of the season. That's essentially going to uncap crests, make Valorstones warbound, and allow players to fully unlock the potential to be able to gear out their character to the best of the best possibilities. And one of the things you're going to be doing is actually increasing the item level of some of the crafted items that your character can create. So if you have a crafted item, like I have a charged claymore for my Death Knight, you will actually be able to raise the item level of the item by 6 item levels in order to boost its item level even further. And you'll be able to do so easily with a new reagent being added on the vendors, which is now available on the PTR, the Gilded Augmentation Matrix, which boosted by 6 item level, although you could do it by 3 if that's what you want to do as well. Although with Gilded Crests being completely uncapped, I think it's probably going to be better just to farm up a bunch of Gilded Crests in order to buy more Gilded Augmentation Matrices. And when you go to recraft an item, you'll notice that there will be now a new slot in that item where you can actually add one of these matrices to boost the item level of that piece. So if you're someone like my rogue who has been, let's say, getting a lot of unlucky drops in my vaults, but has been able to get a lot more crafted gear made for my character, especially with those crests being uncapped in terms of how fast you can farm them, you could potentially on day 1 boost a bunch of those crafted pieces by 6 item levels and make a decent bit of headway in your best slot gear fairly quickly. But it's a good idea to hold off making a craft until next week. Just stock up on the materials necessary so then you don't have to craft and then have to recraft all over again, paying somebody on the work order system double for every single craft. So it might be a good idea to start preparing for that ahead of time, but it's definitely really good news to see just how easy it's going to be to increase the item level of some of your best crafted pieces. Also, on May 20th, we'll be getting access to Horrific Visions as they'll be making a return for Season 2 content, becoming more of an evergreen feature. It's an opportunity for players to earn a bunch of Veteran Track, Champion Track, and Hero Track items. It's also an opportunity to collect a bunch of old rewards from Visions from BFA, but also new ones from some of the Secret Mountain quest lines, as well as End of Vision ones at the end of every single boss kill. Then you also have a vendor that has a variety of different items that you can add to your collection, but also an opportunity to gain additional power, as BFA corruptions make a return, this time as a Helm enchant, and you can only equip one of them at a time, but they are still quite powerful, and many of them have gotten buffed up ever so recently. So before we talk about any new corruptions that got buffed up, we do see Void Ritual that actually got nerfed a little bit. They reduced some of the effectiveness of the stats granted by the Void Ritual, which basically is a very baseline, very passive option. As you deal damage, there's a chance you can start a Void Ritual where you'll gain additional secondary stats over time. When the Void Ritual procs, you get a buff called The End does come in, where you start to gain all secondary stat increases little by little, which is a solid bit and so far looked like the best corruption for every single class out there. But with them nerfing the stats a little bit, does give room for some of the other corruptions to get a little bit more play, and some of the worst ones also got buffed up a considerable amount. The other one that got buffed up by quite a bit is Echoing Void, which was really underwhelming, but they recently buffed up both the base version and the greater version of this little corruption by 70%, making it a lot more effective. It is a melee heavy corruption effect that mostly works while you're up close to a target. As you deal damage, you have a chance to get the buff of Void Coalescing, and when you deal damage, there's always a chance that you will just start consuming all of those stacks, pulsating on the target back to back to back. So in big group AoE situations, it can actually deal a decent bit of damage, but it also is a solid option based on early numbers for melee classes, even in single target. And for some melee classes, this may actually end up being your best corruption going forward, especially if you're a class that likes raw damage. So anything that maybe utilizes a lot of versatility or portions of versatility into the class, or maybe a class that doesn't have like the greatest mastery or something, you may actually end up using that corruption more than anything. Now, another one that got buffed up is actually Twisted Appendage. Buffed up is damage by about 12% or 12.5%, making it a lot better and a lot closer to all the other corruptions, though not necessarily amazing either. This corruption is also notoriously difficult to test on the PTR, but you can see what it does proc because it needs a living target to go and proc on. It does do a solid bit of burst damage, but it does have a slowing effect, or at least it used to. I don't know if it works on rares or not, but you can proc a bunch of them back to back, and if the slowing effect does persist as it's supposed to, it could potentially be pretty good within PvP, with both of the slow as well as its additional damage that's kind of difficult to stop unless you literally go up and try stunning the tentacle in order to shut down some of that damage. But definitely a buff either way that is noticeable, and it's an opportunity for even more corruptions to possibly get some play when this update officially goes live on May 20th, which means we're about to get, outside of the turbo boost, yet another opportunity for even more additional power gains in the Season 2 content. But with that being said, as always, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give this a like. I would very much appreciate it. Also, join our Discord community to keep up with all the regular updates, whether it is for the most recent patch notes for 11.15 or possibly future updates like 11.17 right now over on the PTR. Also, let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.